dream in Washington. America First is riling up Republicans and Democrats and Europeans in Washington and Brussels. But how is it going down with everyday Americans? We're going to check that out. Plus, the president today taking aim at Germany, challenging the country to explain a Russian pipeline deal and demanding our NATO allies up their defense spending to 4%, while simultaneously getting slammed for allegedly cozying up to Vladimir Putin. It's a lot, so we've got team coverage tonight. Trace Gallagher looking at the history of U.S.-Russia meetings, but we begin with Chief White House correspondent John Roberts live in Brussels for us tonight. Good evening, John.
Shannon, good morning to you from Brussels, where the sun is just about to come up. In a little less than 8 hours from now, the president will board Air Force One bound for London, England, and that working visit with Prime Minister Theresa May, who had something interesting to say last night at a NATO dinner. We'll bring you that in just a second. But first of all, after a little bit of rancor in the first day of NATO meetings yesterday, the leaders seemed to put their differences aside at a reception following the meetings last night. The president getting together with the First Lady and the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, smiling, chatting with each other for a number of minutes. But earlier in the day, the president really unloaded on Germany and Merkel, even though he didn't mention her by name, for signing that deal with Russia's Vladimir Putin for a couple of pipelines that will bring Russian natural gas right across the Baltic Sea and straight into Germany. The president saying that is a bad deal for NATO. Listen here.
You're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. Germany is totally controlled by Russia. If you look at it, Germany is a captive of Russia because they supply. They got rid of their coal plants, they got rid of their nuclear. They're getting so much of the oil and gas from Russia.
Well, with those comments, the president really pulled the pin on a grenade that he tossed to square into the NATO summit. Later on in the afternoon, the president had a sit-down bilateral meeting with the Chancellor of Germany. The two of them did talk about the pipeline, didn't talk about it, mention it at least publicly. The president saying the two of them had a good meeting and that the United States has got a very good relationship with Germany. But listen to what the German foreign minister said about the president's comments.
We are not prisoners, either of the United States or Russia. We are one of the guarantors of a free world, and that will remain the case.
And the president again making contributions to NATO a big deal. NATO members a couple of years ago, well, 4 years ago actually, promised to pledge 2% of their GDP to military spending to help support the alliance. Only 5 out of the 29 NATO members are at that 2% now, and the president encouraging them not to wait until a deadline date of 2024 to do it, but to do it earlier. In the joint declaration statement, which is a consensus document, it seems that all 29 NATO members see the need to increase spending on defense. In the summit declaration, it says, quote, fair burden sharing underpins the alliance's cohesion, solidarity, credibility, and ability to fulfill our Article 3 and Article 5 commitments. And now back to British Prime Minister Theresa May, who last night at the NATO dinner made some comments about President Trump's upcoming summit with Vladimir Putin. Of course, the president getting a lot of flack back home, facing a lot of opposition, particularly from Democrats, to this idea of sitting down with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, Finland on Monday. But Theresa May taking the opposite tack, throwing her full support behind the president's meeting in a statement saying, I welcome President Trump's forthcoming meeting with President Putin. Open channels of communication between the U.S. and Russia are key to managing the risks of confrontation. Now, Theresa May has got some political problems at home. Perhaps she's looking for support from President Trump. But supporting President Trump never really buys her much capital in the UK. So, Shannon, very interesting to see how much she was willing to go out on a limb to talk about President Trump and throw that full support behind the upcoming summit. Jen?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. All right, John Roberts live.